Hello there and welcome to Cansanity. Today we're going to make one of my favorite preserves, hot pepper jelly. Now I like to make this hot pepper jelly at this time of the year because it's easy to find beautiful red peppers. Now I like to use red peppers whether they're the sweet in this jelly or the hot, because if I use red peppers then it's going to help infuse some beautiful red color into the jelly. Now, I was really lucky. I got some beautiful bell peppers at the market today, and so these are just going to be perfect for this jelly. Now, because I buy them locally and in season, you can get such large peppers, and when you get the large peppers, then you really only need a pepper for one batch of this jelly, because once I cut this up, this is going to be about 2 cups. Possibly I might need a little bit of another pepper, but most likely I'll get 2 cups out of one large red bell pepper. Now the other pepper that I like to use is habaneros. Habaneros are my favorite hot pepper, and I love it that at this time of the year you're able to pick them up in this beautiful red color. Now they're a hot pepper, and they're hotter than the jalapeno or hotter than a serrano, and so you don't need to put the seeds in it. I just slice that up and I put that in without the seeds, and that's the level of heat that I like in my hot pepper jelly. But if you really want it rockin' hot, then put the seeds in as well. So the second pepper that I would choose if I couldn't find habaneros in red or orange is a serrano, and serranos will come in red as well, and that's a beautiful pepper to use in this pepper jelly as well. Now you could use jalapenos. Jalapenos also turn red if left on the plant long enough, and so you could use red jalapenos, but that's going to be a much milder hot pepper jelly. And if you can't find any red hot peppers, then you could use green. It's just not going to add to the beautiful color of the jelly. And so, but if you're limited to just getting green hot peppers, then, and you really want to make this jelly, then go for it. It'll still turn out, and it'll still turn out to be a nice hot pepper jelly. Now I like to also add cranberries, because cranberries also have that beautiful red color, and the flavor is perfect. It's a tart and sweet. And now what I like to do is I like to buy cranberries when they're in season, which is usually around the beginning of October in my area, and I buy them locally from a Canadian farm, and I freeze them. I freeze them in October so that I have bags of cranberries to use in my hot pepper jelly for the following year. So now the other thing that I like to use in my hot pepper jelly is I like to use Granny Smith apples, because Granny Smith apples are firm, and they stand up well to cooking, and they have a beautiful flavor, and they have a lot of pectin. So I use about 4 pounds of Granny Smith apples in my hot pepper jelly. And then the last fruit that I use in this jelly is lemons, and so you'll use 1 whole lemon. And if you can find organic lemons, that's what I prefer to use in this hot pepper jelly, but if you can't find those, then use what you can find. Now the other 2 ingredients that you'll put into this hot pepper jelly is sugar, and you'll measure out 3/4 cup of sugar for every cup of juice that you're able to extract from your fruit, and then you're going to use vinegar. Now to extract the juice from the fruit, what you're going to do is you're going to chop all your fruit up, and you're going to put it into a 12-liter pot or larger, and you're going to add your vinegar and water, and you're going to cook that. And you're going to cook that for about 20 minutes. And then once that's cooked, then you're going to turn it into a fine mesh strainer. I have one here. But you're going to also line that with cheesecloth. Now I like to buy cheesecloth by the bolt, and I just pick it up at my local fabric store. And when you buy it like this, you can get it on sale. And if you're going to be making a lot of hot pepper jelly, then, or any kind of jelly, I'd recommend going to your fabric store and picking up your cheesecloth there. It's much cheaper. And so I'm going to wash up and get chopping and show you how this comes together. Okay, so to clean my apples, what I do is I put my apples in a solution of cold water and 1 cup of vinegar. And I'll let my apples soak for 30 minutes like that, and then I'll rinse them and then I'll use them. So this is how I clean my apples. Now, do that the day you're making your hot pepper jelly. Don't do this and then leave your apples for a couple days, because the water will get inside here and will cause your apples to rot if you soak them like this and then leave them for a couple days. So just do this maybe an hour before you're about to chop up all the rest of your fruits and vegetables for your hot pepper jelly. Okay, so that's this is the way I cut up the Granny Smith apples. So that's 4 pounds of Granny Smith apples, about 12. Then 1 cup of cranberries goes in there. And then your 2 cups of red bell pepper. And then your 4 ounces of habaneros. A few seeds in there, a couple seeds. Then 1 organic lemon sliced. And so that's all the fruit that needs to go in there. And now we're going to add the water. So we'll add 1 cup of water, or 3 cups of water. And 3 cups of vinegar that is 5% acidity. That's 1 cup. And then 2 more cups. So we have a total of 3 cups of vinegar. Now I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to bring that up to a boil, and then I'm going to simmer it for about 25 minutes with the, turn it down to simmer, and I'm going to simmer it for 25 minutes with the lid on. I don't want the liquid to evaporate. Okay, so the fruit has finished cooking, and I've set up a fine mesh strainer over a pot, and I've lined it with cheesecloth. Now cheesecloth comes off the roll double, and then I doubled it again. So this is 4-ply. Now before I put it into the strainer, I dampen it with water because I don't want the cheesecloth to take up some of the jelly juice. And so now I'll let this sit over the pot and let it drip for 30 minutes. Okay, so my jelly juice has been strained. Because I did 2 batches of the cooking the fruit, I ended up with 12 cups of jelly juice in total, 6 cups each. And so now I'm going to set my pots up so that I can do my process that juice into jelly. Now I like to only process my jelly juice in small batches for 2 reasons. One, when you stick to 5 cups or less, you can safely use an 8-liter pot. And also, when you process your jelly juice in small batches, it reaches a gel point quicker. And so I find that if you try to process too much jelly juice at once, then it's going to take longer for it to reach the gel point, and you run the risk of overcooking it and potentially destroying some of the pectin. So my advice is to stick to 5 cups or less, especially if you only have a 8-liter pot. Now, if you have a 12-liter pot, or if you've used your 12-liter pot and cleaned it out, you could process 6 cups in here. So you could just, if you're just doing 1 batch, you can just do all 6 in one. But it is going to foam up quite high. It'll foam up quite almost to the top of this 12-liter pot once you start cooking it. And in fact, when you use 5 cups, if you're using 5 cups and you're using your 8-liter pot, it still is going to foam up quite high. And once it gets close to the top, you have to make sure that you stir it down. And if it's you have a lot of time left on the cook, then I'd even suggest when it gets really high to just turn your element down to let the foam subside a little bit and then turn it back up. You don't want it to overboil on your stove because burnt sugar is so smelly, and so you want to avoid that. So if you've started making your hot pepper jelly in a 12-liter pot, then I'd suggest just rinse it out and clean it up and then use that. Then you're not going to run the risk of having it boil over. So now, the other thing that I'd like to tell you is that I like to warm my sugar when I'm making my hot pepper jelly. And the reason being is that if I warm the sugar, and then at the same time while I'm warming the sugar, I'm bringing my jelly juice to a boil. Once you add the warm sugar to your boiling jelly juice, it's going to reach a gel point quicker than if you added the liquid and the sugar together. So that's how I like to make my any of my jellies. Now you could just throw the jelly juice into a pot and then throw the sugar in and bring it up to a boil, but I find that I just get a better result when I warm the sugar first, so that's just how I do it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure out 5 cups of jelly juice, and I'm going to put 5 cups in this pot, and I'll do 5 cups in this pot, and I'll just process them in batches of 5. Okay, so I've started to heat my jelly juice, and it's just starting to boil. So now, and my sugar has been warmed in my oven at 225 degrees for 10 minutes. So I'm just going to take the sugar out and add it now to my jelly juice. So be careful when you're adding your sugar because you don't want to get that all over your stove. So there's no rush. You can just add it in slowly. And I have this jelly juice in an 8-liter pot. And once this sugar is all added and this comes up to a boil, it should take about 15 minutes for it to reach the gel point. But we'll set the timer and we'll see how long it takes. Okay, so my timer just went off. It's been 15 minutes, and you see how that's foamed up all the way to the top. And now I had my element on high the whole time. And so what I like to do is I don't use a candy thermometer. I just use a spoon test, and I just run my spoon through the pot, and then once the drips just hang on the edge like that, then I know my jelly is ready. And so I'm just looking to see if once the drips just kind of really hang on, and that's what's happening now. I don't know if you can see it, but the drips are just hanging on. And I also look at the back of the spoon to see if there is sheeting. It's just starting now to do that. And so, yeah, there's sheeting on that. Okay. So my jelly is ready to put in the jars. Okay, so I took my sterilized jars out of the oven so they're nice and hot, and I have my funnel and the utensils that I might need in boiling hot water so that they'll be sterile as well, and I have my ladle in there as well. And so now I like to use, I like to sterilize some 250 ml jars as well as some 125s in case I don't quite have enough to fill a 250 ml jar, but I can fill at least one 125 ml jar. Now I left the foam on because with this jelly I skim off the foam after I've filled the jars because it's just easy. The foam will rise to the top if you do this quickly, and then you can just skim off the foam once it's in the jar. So I kind of overfill and then I skim off the foam. Now you have to do this quickly because if it starts to set, if you leave it and it starts to set, then you can actually push some of the foam into the jelly, and so you really want the foam to, if you're going to do it this way, you want the jelly juice to be really hot so that the foam just rises to the top of the jar. So again, I'm just going to overfill these, and then I'm going to skim off the foam. Okay, so now you see the foam sitting on top of the jelly. If you see it all kind of sticks together, so you can just kind of skim it off while it's in the jar. And I'm using a sterilized spoon to do that. And now you're going to need to have a 1/4 inch headspace on these jars. So once you've skimmed the foam, if you feel you have to adjust that headspace, then do so. I see that I have a little bit more than 1/4 in that first jar that I skimmed the foam off, so I'll take some of that out, but I think this one will be a little under. So now if you have a little bit of foam left in your jar, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's just if you get the foam out, it's just a nice, it looks better when you open the jar. And so it's if you can get some of it out or most of it out, that's best for presentation. Okay, so now I've dampened a paper towel with boiling hot water, and then I just wipe the rims of the jars. You want to make sure that there's nothing that will get in the way of the seal, and so you always wipe down the rims of your jars with a dampened cloth. And so I'm just going to do all of that. Okay, so I have my snap lids in the boiling water, and you only need to leave them in there for 30 seconds to soften the seal. And then I use my magnetic wand to just take the lids out, and they just touch in the center. You don't want to touch the edges of the rings with your fingers, so just to get it off. You know, to keep everything sterile, you do it this way. Okay, so now I'll just put the rings on to fingertip tight. Now don't use any rings that are dented because that might prevent the seal. So when they spin nice, then you know it's likely to be a good ring. So like that, and just to fingertip tight. Now these rings were also sterilized in my oven. Okay, now I'm ready to put them in the boiling water canner. Okay, so I'm just going to put the jars in my canning pot. Now you see my water is at a full rolling boil. And so you're going to put them in so that they are 1 inch apart, 1 inch away from the side of the pot. Give them a lot of space. Now I have 6 jars here, and I'm going to put them all around that way, all around the edge. And I'm actually going to put an empty jar in the center. I think I have room for that. I might change my mind, but just because if I put the empty jar in the center, then that's going to prevent these jars from tipping over. Now I could alternatively, actually what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to take that jar out and just use a jar of the jelly and just put that in. I'll just do the 6. So there's 1 inch apart, and there's lots of space in between the jars. Now I'll wait for that to come to a full rolling boil again, and now this pot has an indicator on it that when it's the steam is hot and when it's at the right temperature, the indicator goes into the green. But it is just an indicator. You also have to watch for that water to be boiling, and there's steam vents here. Once the steam is coming out the vents and out the sides, then I'm ready to set my timer, and I need to process this jelly for 5 minutes. Okay, so my timer just went off, and so I'll take the jars out. Just want to lift straight up. Don't worry about the water being on top of the jars. It will evaporate. and that one already sealed. So do you want to hear the pop, pop, pop? Make sure when you're taking them out of the pot not to grab them by the rings. Okay, so my hot pepper jelly is out of the pot and I'm super happy because they all sealed, and I ended up with 11 250 ml jars and 2 125 ml jars. So I love giving this hot pepper jelly away at Christmas time as gifts. It's always received well, and I love having it as a snack in the evening on crackers with cream cheese. Now, I'm super happy that my father-in-law made me this beautiful sign for Cansanity, and so thank you, Delbert, for making that sign for me. And it's going to be used a lot of times. And so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you if you're enjoying the videos, that you go to Cansanity.com and check out the recipes there and check out the video section. There's more videos there. You can always subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then you'll get a notification every time I create a new video. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a great day.